Hi class. In this video we're going to look at a problem similar to 3-20 from chapter 3 of your homework. I've been using the software that comes with the book, but for this one I looked at it and I think it will probably be easier and make more sense, if I set this up as an Excel spreadsheet. So we're going to try that. This is a pretty long problem, but it's not too hard to complete, I don't think. So if we just walk through it step by step, I think we can do it. So the problem I put the data up here. So we've got Northwood Company that manufactures basketballs. They sell them for $32. Their variable expenses are $22.40 a ball. And last year they sold 52,000 of the balls, and they give us some results here. So in requirement 1, it says we are to compute last year's contribution margin ratio and break-even point in balls. So I tried to go through and set up some formulas and some formatting. So I would suggest that when you do your homework, you either use this spreadsheet and tweak it to fit your problem, and I'll put this up in the classroom, or come up with something, set up your own spreadsheet that's similar. All right, so for this one, we need a selling price. We're going to take out our variable expenses to get our contribution margin. So our selling price is just our sales divided by the number of balls we sold. So I'm actually going to write this out here. So this would be our sales of $1,664,000 divided by 52,000 balls. So if we do the math on that, we should come up with $32 a ball, and that's actually what they said they were selling for, so that checks out right. Our variable expenses, and they're given up here, $1,164,800. So $1,164,800. Whoops, that wasn't right. I'm looking at my wrong chart here. Variable expenses per ball. So we've got to take the one, let's write this out here. So 1,664,000 divided by $52 a ball, or 52,000 balls. I've got through. I knew something didn't look right here. 1,164,000. Sorry about that. Divided by 52,000 balls. That might help. I thought that just did not look right. So if we do that, take our variable expenses up here and divide it by the number of balls we sold, that gives us a per ball variable expense of $22.40. Which gives us a contribution margin of $9.60. Sorry, my formatting's off a little bit, but over here, I have it set up so we can do this by percentages. So of the sales price, that's 100% of the sales price. Our variable expenses would be what percent of the sales price. So we do the math on that, we come out with 70%. And that should be a percentage. So 100% minus 70% is 30%. So up here we've got 32 minus 22.40 is $9.60, which is 100% minus 70% is a 30% contribution margin. All right, so now that I finally made it through that, we can calculate our break-even point, and I put the formula here. So our break-even point is fixed expenses divided by contribution margin. So if we're going to do that, we would be, we can actually do this in a formula in Excel. So you put equals, and our fixed expenses are up here. It's $422,400. And we're going to divide that by our contribution margin, which is $9.60. So our break-even point for this requirement is $44,000. And those are basketballs. right, so, whoops. These are your answers to requirement 1A. I'm going crazy with my mouse here. Okay, requirement 1B, compute the degree of operating leverage at last year's sales. So to do that, and I've put the formula here again, our degree of operating leverage equals our contribution margin less or divided by our net operating income. So we get that from up here in the chart. Our contribution margin is $499,200. Our net operating income is $76,800. So we're going to use those amounts. I'm going to put this down here, so I'm going to take $499,200 and divided that by $76,800. And that gives me a degree of operating leverage of 6.5. So that is the answer to that one, requirement 2. All right, we're going to go down to the next one. It says compute next year's contribution margin ratio and break-even point. And actually, let's see, we're going to assume, I didn't type this in the instructions, which would be helpful information to have. So we're going to assume variable expenses, oops, can't talk and type at the same time, increased by, let's see, $1.60. All right, now we have all the information we need. So our selling price doesn't say that our selling price changes, it remains constant. So our selling price is still $32 a ball, and that was given in the instructions. It wants to know what the next year's contribution margin ratio will be. And so we're going to do this the same way as we did up here, except for our variable variable expenses increased. So up here we had variable expenses of $22.40. But this says they increased by $1.60. So now our variable expenses are $24. So I added the $1.60 to the $22.40. So $24 here, which gives us a contribution margin of $8. So if we do that percentage-wise, it's 100% at the top. And $24 is actually 75% of $32, which gives us percentage left over for a contribution margin of 25%. The next thing we are asked to do is to calculate our break-even point. So to do that, we're going to take our fixed expenses and divide that by our contribution margin. So our fixed expenses, this part of the problem doesn't say that that changed at all. So our fixed expenses are still $422,400. That's given in the instructions above. But our contribution margin changed, so it's going to be $8 now, which means that our break-even point now is $52,800, and those are basketballs. All right, so requirement 3. How many basketballs will have to be sold next year to earn the same net operating income? So this this equation or formula I gave you here, unit sales to attain target profit, it almost looks like the break-even point. So if you think about it, our break-even point is fixed expenses divided by contribution margin. And a break-even point just means that we have $0 in target profit. So if we want more than $0 in target profit, we're going to take that target profit and add it to what it takes to get to the 0 point, which is this fixed expenses divided by contribution margin income. So this is our formula. Let me see my notes. So we've got our target profit, it says, is what it was this last year. So we go all the way up here. That's $76,800. So that is our target profit. So let's see if I can do this. $76,800 is our target profit, and we're going to add to that our fixed expenses, and that's given in the problem, is $422,400. Then I'm going to divide that by our contribution margin, our unit contribution margin, which is $8 a unit. And that gives us 62,400, and those are basketballs. So we would have to sell 62,400 basketballs to keep our target profit the same as what it was last year, considering that we had an increase in our variable costs, which changed our contribution margin. All right, so requirement 4. We want to maintain the same contribution margin as last year. What selling price must be set since the variable cost increased in part 2? So our variable cost, remember, increased to $24. All right, so here I put in a formula, and the P stands for our new price, and then we've got variable cost plus our new contribution margin. And this is actually going to look, and I'm going to type this out. Our P is going to equal our variable cost, which is $24. And that came from up here in part 2 when we had that increase in cost. And then we're going to add to that our new contribution margin, which is actually, let's see, where is our new contribution margin? Is, let's see, 30% times the price. Oops, that should be a capital P. And that's because we want the same contribution margin ratio as last year, and that 30% came from up here in requirement 1. So that's the contribution margin we had last year. We want to keep that this year. And so remember, the contribution margin, down here, let me see if I find it. There's our $24 is our variable cost. Then our contribution margin is a percentage of our prices right here, so that was 0.3. So if we did the math on that, and we'll try to work through it step by step. So we would actually have, we would move the 0.3p over here to the left-hand side. So that would mean we had 1p, which is over on the left, minus 0.30p would give us 0.70p equals 24. Then if we took both sides and divided them by the 0.70, we would have p equals 24 divided by 7. Oops, I should have had more lines here. And that gives us p equals, and 24 divided by 7 is 3.43. Got a decimal in the wrong place somewhere. Let's see. Oh, I forgot my decimal in this spot. So that should be 24 divided by 0.7 equals 34.29. That makes more sense. So our new price should be 34.29 if we have that increase in variable costs. If you want to check that and make sure, you can actually use the same format as we did above when we were doing our other work. So that would give us our selling price of 34.29, which is what we just calculated. Our variable expenses, remember, those rose to $24, and that's the number we actually used right there, gives us a contribution margin of $10.29. This is 100%, whoops. And the $24 variable cost and the $34.29 sales price, if we take the $24 divided by 34.29, we get 70%. That should have a percent after it. gives us 30% contribution margin ratio, which is what we were trying to get. It said we wanted to maintain the same contribution margin ratio as last year, and last year, which was all the way up, I think, in part 1, it was 30%. So this is just a double check to make sure that we did it right. So hopefully that makes sense. That's not actually required, but just trying to kind of back into that number. So number 5, or requirement 5, says they might build a new plant, and the new plant would slash variable expenses by 20%, but would increase fixed costs by 70%. What would the contribution margin ratio and break-even point be if the new plant was built? All right, so I've got my little chart set up. Doesn't say that we're going to change the selling price, so our selling price is still $32. But we're going to, it says decrease our variable expenses by 20%. So if we go all the way back up here, we've got variable expenses at $22.40. Let's see, let me make sure I'm reading this right. Yeah, $22.40. And let's go back down here. Sorry for all the scrolling. But we want to decrease it by 20%, which means we'll only have 80% left. So I thought the easiest thing to do was to take the $22.40 and multiply it by 80%. Gives you $17.92. You could actually do it by multiplying your variable cost times the 20% and then taking that 20% away from the variable cost, which would still give you $17.92. Your contribution margin with those numbers is $14.08. So I'm going to put my percentages in here. So that's 100%. Our variable expenses, $17.92 divided by $32 is 56%, which gives us 44% left over. That's our contribution margin. So this is our answers on this one. Our break-even point would be our fixed expenses divided by our contribution margin. So our fixed expenses is what's going up. So let's see up here. Our fixed expenses were $422,400. But they are going to increase by 70%. So if I take $422,400 and multiply that by 1.7, I get $718,080. So I just multiplied that by 170% essentially, 100% of what they were plus 70 more percent. So our fixed expenses, or in this calculation would be our fixed expenses of $718,080, which is what I just calculated. And I'm going to divide that by our contribution margin, which is here, $14.08. So this is our break-even point, and those are basketballs. Oh my goodness. Part 6. If the new plant is built, how many balls to earn the same net operating income as last year? So we've already used this formula, so I just brought my formula down just so you can see it down here. So we want to have the same target profit as last year, which was all the way back up here, $76,800. So we go back down here, and that's $76,800. And I need a parentheses there. I'm going to add to that our fixed expenses. And those changed. Remember, our fixed expenses went up. Where did I put them? Oh, I didn't write them down. Our fixed expenses were $718,080. Let me type that in and then I'll explain. So the $718,080 comes from the step we did above to calculate the break-even, where we took the fixed expenses times 1.7 which is 170% of what they were. So I didn't actually write that down up here when I was calculating this, but it came from this part of this formula up here. So we've got that, and then we're going to divide that by our contribution margin, which comes from up here also. That's $14.08. And that gives us 56,454.55 basketballs, which would be round up to 56,455 basketballs. So that's the answer on that one. And we're still not quite done. We've got to assume the new plant is built and we sell 52,000 balls, and they want us to prepare a contribution format income statement. So I set one up. It's kind of a blank. And so let's see, we're going to sell 52,000 balls. And let's see, go back up here. We sell 52,000 balls, and we're doing that at the $32 that they were originally costing. So those sales are actually still up here. So we've got $1,664,000 we need to plug in down here. And that amount's given. You fix my formatting. Just make it look a little pretty. All right, our variable expenses. This is, let me type this out for you. So our variable expenses now are $14.08 a basketball. Oops. And that came from up here because we had the, we built the factory, we had a change in variable cost of change in fixed expenses. So now we're left with $14.08, which is our variable cost. And we sold 52,000 basketballs, I think. Did it say? Yeah, we're still selling 52,000 basketballs. So that's what I'm doing here. So that 1408 times 52,000 is, whoops, I'm doing something wrong. Try that again. 52,000 times 14.08. I'm pulling the wrong number from somewhere. Oh, I'm sorry. 1792. Help if I could read my own spreadsheet. I was using the contribution margin. 1792 times $15,000 or 52,000 balls. There we go. So if you do this math, your variable expenses are, let's see, $931,840. So your contribution margin is going to be your sales less your variable cost. Our fixed expenses, we recalculated those a moment ago. Let's see if I did I ever write them down anywhere? I didn't actually write them down, but it's in my formula. So here's, it's this part of this formula, our fixed expenses, and then we had fixed expenses here. So actually, I was just clicking on that to see it. It was $718,080. It'll teach me to write down my formulas so you can see them actually, huh? So there's our fixed expenses. So our net operating income is our contribution margin less our fixed expenses, gives us a net operating income of $14,080. So I apologize for my stumbling around on that, but hopefully you can see where we got those numbers. All right, the last thing, compute the degree of operating leverage. So I've got our formula here. So we're just going to plug in some numbers. So it says it's our contribution margin, and that's based off of these last calculations. So our contribution margin divided by our net operating income. So pretty easy, just come up here and find those numbers. So here's our contribution margin, and we're going to divide that by our net operating income, which is right there. Gives us a degree of operating leverage of 52. All right, so I think that is all of the pieces. I will post this video in the classroom. I will also post this spreadsheet as it's done in the classroom, so you can use it to do your homework. You can change it. Of course, I've tried to kind of type in abbreviated abbreviated requirements here from the text in my problem that I was using. So yours will be different numbers. You'll have to take that out. You don't have to write in all of these questions. You can just put requirement 5 and then do it if you want to do it that way. Just as long as I can find your answers. You don't have to highlight, but if you do, I can find them a little easier. So anyway, this is problem 3-20, similar to your homework. Please let me know if you have any questions.